Samuel Hayes hangs upside down from a cottonwood tree. Morrison's knife gleaming inches from his throat. Blood rushes to his head as 5 armed men close in. Then thunder cracks across the valley. Twin cowboys on Appaloosas, rifles raised, eyes burning with lethal fury. Someone's about to die. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The sun hammered down on the Montana prairie like a blacksmith's anvil, heat waves shimmering off the cracked earth in rippling curtains of gold. 18-year-old Samuel Hayes wiped sweat from his brow with a trembling hand, his slight frame already aching from just 3 hours of fence mending. He had arrived at the Double Star Ranch that morning with nothing but a worn satchel and desperate hope, orphaned and penniless. Hired on as summer helped by a foreman who barely glanced at his boyish face before pointing him toward the back 40. What the foreman hadn't mentioned was that the Double Star belonged to the Garrett twins, and that those 2 massive cowboys had a reputation that stretched clear across 3 counties. Not for cruelty, but for something else entirely, something the other ranch hands whispered about in hushed tones after dark, their eyes gleaming with equal parts fear and fascination. Samuel heard the horses before he saw them. Twin Appaloosas matching in their power and grace. Their riders even more perfectly matched. The Garrett brothers crested the ridge like something out of a fever dream, silhouetted against the burning sky. Both stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered and narrow-hipped with the kind of raw physical presence that made the air itself seem to thicken and pulse with energy. Even from a distance, Samuel could feel something shift in his chest, his breath catching for reasons he didn't want to examine. Marcus Garrett rode on the left, his dark hair falling across storm-gay eyes that missed nothing. His twin brother Mason rode to the right, identical in build, but with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow that gave him an edge of danger. They moved in perfect synchronization, as if they shared not just blood, but a single consciousness, each anticipating the other's movements before they happened. Samuel forced himself to return to the fence post, hands shaking as he tried to hammer in a stubborn nail. He could feel their approach, the thunder of hooves vibrating through the ground, through his bones, settling somewhere deep in his belly like molten heat. He had never felt anything like this overwhelming awareness of another person's presence. And there were 2 of them closing in like wolves circling prey. The horses stopped. Samuel didn't look up, couldn't look up, terrified of what he might see in those 4 eyes watching him, terrified of what they might see in his. Well, now Marcus' voice rolled across the distance, deep and smooth as aged whiskey. What do we have here? The foreman didn't mention hiring on someone. So he paused, and Samuel could feel the weight of that gaze traveling down his body, taking in every detail. Young Mason's laugh was darker, edged with something that made Samuel's pulse spike. Young and pretty. Hell, Marcus. He looks like he'd blow away in a strong wind. What's a boy like this doing on a ranch? Samuel's hands clenched around the hammer. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing him flinch. I can work, he said, voice steadier than he felt. I'm stronger than I look. The silence that followed felt loaded, dangerous. Then Marcus swung down from his saddle with fluid grace, boots hitting the dirt with a solid thud that seemed to echo through Samuel's entire body. Mason followed, and suddenly the vast prairie felt impossibly small, the twins' presence overwhelming everything else. Stronger than you look, Marcus repeated, moving closer. Samuel could smell him now, leather and sweat in something wild, untamed that. So his hand reached out, massive and calloused, and wrapped around Samuel's wrist, dwarfing it completely. The touch sent electricity racing up Samuel's arm, his breath hitching audibly. Because from where I'm standing, I could snap these wrists like kindling. Samuel's heart hammered against his ribs. He tried to pull away, but Marcus' grip was iron. Not painful, but absolutely unyielding. Then Mason was behind him, so close Samuel could feel the heat radiating from that powerful body, could feel breath against the back of his neck, raising every hair on his body. Easy now, Mason murmured, his voice a low rumble that Samuel felt more than heard. No need to be scared, boy. We don't break our toys. Not unless they ask real nice. The word toys sent fire flooding through Samuel's veins. Shame and something else. something darker and more desperate mixing until he couldn't tell them apart. He wasn't like that, had never been like that, had spent years pushing down every forbidden thought, every dream that left him gasping and confused in the darkness of night. But here, trapped between these two massive men, their combined presence crushing every defense he'd built, Samuel felt something inside him crack wide open. "I'm not," he started, but his voice came out breathy and weak. "I'm not a toy." Marcus's thumb stroked across the inside of Samuel's wrist, finding his racing pulse. "No? Then what are you, Samuel Hayes?" The sound of his own name in that deep, knowing voice made Samuel's knees go weak. How did they already know his name? Had they been asking about him, watching him? Mason's hand settled on Samuel's hip, burning through the thin fabric of his work shirt. "Because it seems to me you're a boy who showed up here all alone with no family and no prospects. Desperate enough to take whatever work he could get." His lips brushed Samuel's ear, desperate enough to do just about anything to keep his job. Samuel's whole body trembled now, caught between them, their heat surrounding him like a living thing. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. But his body wasn't listening to his mind anymore, was responding to their touch like tinder to flame. "Please," he whispered, not even sure what he was asking for. Marcus leaned in until his face was inches from Samuel's, those gray eyes burning with an intensity that stole what little breath Samuel had left. "Please what?" "Please let you go." His voice dropped even lower. "Or please don't." The question hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and threat. Samuel's mouth opened, closed, words failing him completely. He had never been looked at like this, had never been touched like this, had spent his whole life invisible, insignificant. Now these two giants were looking at him like he was something precious and breakable and infinitely desirable all at once. Mason's hand slid from Samuel's hip to his stomach, splaying wide across trembling muscles. "I think," he said conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather and not the way Samuel was coming apart under their hands. "Our new farmhand needs to learn how things work at the Double Star. Don't you think, Marcus?" Marcus' smile was slow and predatory. "I think you're right, brother." His grip on Samuel's wrist tightened just slightly. "See, Samuel, my brother and I, we share everything on this ranch. Everything." His free hand came up to cup Samuel's jaw, forcing his head up, making him meet those devastating eyes. "And when we see something we want, well, we take it together." Samuel's breath came in short gasps, now his entire body on fire. He should run, should scream, should do anything but stand here drowning in sensation. But Mason's hand on his stomach was moving lower, not touching anything forbidden, but promising everything. And Marcus's thumb was tracing his lower lip with unbearable gentleness. And Samuel realized with a shock that ran through him like lightning that he didn't want to run. He wanted to burn. "The barn," Mason said, his voice rough. "Privacy now." Marcus nodded, never taking his eyes off Samuel's face. "He's shaking like a leaf. Think he can even walk?" "Only one way to find out." Mason's hand left Samuel's body, and he immediately felt the loss like a physical ache. Both brothers stepped back, and Samuel nearly collapsed without their support. "Walk," Marcus commanded, gesturing toward the weathered barn in the distance. Samuel's legs obeyed before his mind could process the order, moving mechanically across the dusty ground. The twins flanked him on either side, not touching, but close enough that he could feel them, their presence a constant weight pressing in on him from both directions. The walk to the barn felt like miles, though it couldn't have been more than 100 yards. With each step, Samuel's heart raced faster, his mind spinning with questions he was terrified to answer. What was going to happen in that barn? What did they want from him? And why, God help him, did he want to find out? The barn door creaked open, revealing shadows and golden shafts of dusty sunlight. Mason entered first, Marcus' hand on the small of Samuel's back, guiding him inside. The door swung shut behind them with a sound of finality that made Samuel's stomach flip. Inside, the barn smelled of hay and leather and horses. Familiar scents made strange by the charged atmosphere. A ladder led up to the hoft and Marcus nodded toward it. Up, Samuel climbed, his hands gripping the rough wood, acutely aware of the eyes on him, watching every movement. The loft was half filled with hay bales stacked against the walls, leaving an open space in the center. Sunlight streamed through gaps in the roof, painting everything in golden shadow. The twins emerged behind him, moving with that uncanny synchronization. They shrugged out of their shirts in one fluid motion, revealing bodies that made Samuel's breath stop entirely. Muscle layered over muscle, skin bronzed from years under the sun. Old scars and new scratches mapping lives lived hard and dangerous. They were identical and yet not mirror images, with subtle differences that Samuel's eyes devoured hungrily despite himself. "You're staring," Marcus observed, amused. "Like what you see." Samuel tore his gaze away, face burning. I'm not. I've never. Mason moved closer until Samuel had to tilt his head back to meet his eyes. Never been with a man. Never been with anyone. The silence was answer enough. Mason's expression shifted, something dark and possessive flickering across his features. "A virgin," he breathed. "Marcus, he's never been touched." Marcus's answering smile was sharp enough to cut. "Even better means we get to teach him everything." His hand reached out, fingers tangling in Samuel's hair, not pulling, but holding, claiming. "And we're very thorough teachers." Samuel's whole body was on fire now, burning from the inside out. He should be terrified, should be running for his life. But instead, he was leaning into Marcus' touch like a flower seeking sun, desperate for more, even his shame twisted in his gut. "The thing is," Marcus continued, his voice dropping to that low rumble that vibrated through Samuel's bones. "My brother and I, we have particular needs. Needs that can't be met by just one person." His thumb stroked along Samuel's jaw. "We need someone who can take us both, who can handle everything we want to give together," Mason added, moving to Samuel's other side. "Both of us all night until you can't remember your own name. Can't think of anything but how we feel inside you." The words should have shocked Samuel, should have sent him running instead. They sent heat flooding through his body, pooling low in his belly, making him ache in ways he'd never experienced before. His breath came in short gasps, his hands clenched at his sides to keep from reaching out, from touching, from begging. "Tell us you want it," Marcus demanded, his hand tightening in Samuel's hair. "Tell us you want us to ruin you." Samuel's eyes squeezed shut. He couldn't say it, couldn't admit out loud what his body was screaming for. But Mason's hand cupped his face, gentle despite the calloused roughness. "Open your eyes, boy. Look at us." Samuel obeyed, his gaze moving between the two perfect faces watching him with identical hunger. In their eyes, he saw promise and danger, pleasure and pain, everything forbidden, and everything he'd secretly dreamed of in the darkness. "Say it," Mason urged. 3 little words. "I want you." The words broke free like a dam bursting. Everything Samuel had been holding back for 18 years, flooding out in a desperate whisper. "I want you. God help me. I want you both." The effect was immediate and devastating. Marcus' mouth crashed down on his, claiming him with a kiss that was more conquest than caress. Tongue demanding entry and taking it, exploring every inch with ruthless thoroughness. Samuel moaned into it, his first kiss and already drowning, already lost. Then Marcus pulled back and Mason was there turning Samuel's head. His kiss different, slower, but no less consuming, tasting and savoring while Marcus' hands roamed over Samuel's body, unbuttoning his shirt with practiced ease. The shirt hit the floor. Then Mason's hands were at Samuel's belt, working it open while Marcus' mouth moved to Samuel's neck, teeth grazing sensitive skin, tongue soothing the sting. Samuel's head fell back, surrendering completely, his body theirs to do with as they pleased. So responsive, Marcus murmured against his throat. "So perfect. Going to make you feel things you've never imagined. Boy. Going to take you apart piece by piece and put you back together again." And again, Mason added, his hands pushing Samuel's pants down. "And again. All night long until you're begging us to stop, begging us to keep going, not knowing which you want more." Samuel stood before them in nothing but his own burning need, exposed and vulnerable and more alive than he'd ever felt. The twins circled him slowly, twin predators appreciating their prey, their gazes scorching every inch of skin. Beautiful, Marcus breathed, absolutely perfect. Ours, Mason agreed. Say it, Samuel. Tell us you're ours. Samuel's voice came out broken, desperate. I'm yours. Both of yours. Please, I know what you need, Marcus interrupted. And we're going to give it to you, every single inch. The twins moved as one, guiding Samuel down into the hay, their bodies covering his from both sides, hands everywhere, touching, claiming, mapping every secret place Samuel had never dared explore on his own. Mouths following, tasting, driving him higher and higher until he thought he might shatter from sensation alone. First time should be special, Mason murmured, his hand wrapping around Samuel with a grip that made stars explode behind his eyes. Should be slow. But I don't think our boy wants slow. Do you, Samuel? Samuel could barely form words, could barely remember how to breathe. Please, he gasped. Please, I can't. It's too much. I need, what do you need? Marcus demanded, his hand joining his brother's, both of them working Samuel in tandem. Say it. You, Samuel cried out. Both of you, please. I need both of you. I need. The sensation building inside him was impossible, terrifying, more intense than anything he'd imagined. His body arched between them, seeking and fleeing at once, until finally the wave crested and crashed over him with a force that whited out the entire world. When Samuel came back to himself, he was gasping for air, trembling violently, tears streaming down his face. The twins held him gently, murmuring praise, stroking his hair and skin until the aftershocks subsided. That was just the beginning, Marcus whispered in his ear. Just a taste of what's to come. Mason's smile was wicked. We haven't even really started yet, and we have all night to show you exactly what you've been missing. Samuel's body impossibly responded to the promise in those words, desires stirring again despite his recent release. The twins noticed, their knowing smiles identical. Insatiable already, Marcus observed. Knew you'd be perfect for us. Let's see how much you can really take, Mason added, reaching for something beyond Samuel's line of sight. The twins had prepared for this, Samuel realized dimly. Had planned this, wanted this. The thought should have frightened him, but instead it sent fresh heat coursing through his veins. They had wanted him, specifically had chosen him, and now they were going to claim him completely. Marcus positioned himself behind Samuel while Mason stayed in front. Their movements coordinated with the ease of long practice. This is going to hurt at first, Marcus warned, his hands gentle on Samuel's hips. Despite the urgency Samuel could feel radiating from both of them. But we'll make it good. So good you'll forget your own name. Samuel nodded, beyond words, beyond thought, trusting them with everything he had. Mason's mouth found his again, swallowing his gasp as Marcus began to open him up. Slow and patient despite the strain Samuel could hear in his breathing. The sensation was overwhelming, impossible. A burning stretch that rode the knife's edge between pleasure and pain. Samuel whimpered into Mason's kiss, hands clutching at broad shoulders, needing an anchor as his world tilted and reformed. Breathe, Mason commanded. Just breathe through it. You're doing so well, taking it so perfectly. Marcus's voice came from behind, strained so tight. God, Samuel, you feel incredible. Going to fill you up so deep you'll never forget who you belong to. The words sent shudders through Samuel's body, making him clench involuntarily, drawing groans from both twins. They worked him slowly, thoroughly, preparing him with a patience that spoke of deep experience and darker desires until finally Samuel was begging incoherently for more, for everything, for them to stop holding back. You ready for us, boy? Marcus asked, his control clearly fraying. Ready to take everything we want to give? Yes, Samuel sobbed. Please, yes, I need you, both of you. Please, Marcus surged forward in one long, devastating thrust that tore a scream from Samuel's throat. Pleasure and pain mixing into something transcendent. He froze there, buried deep, giving Samuel's body time to adjust to the impossible intrusion. Mason's hands roamed Samuel's trembling body, soothing and inflaming at once. So perfect, Marcus groaned, taking me so well. Knew you were made for this. Made for us. Samuel could only whimper, overwhelmed by the fullness, the invasion, the sheer wrongness of it that somehow felt more right than anything ever had. Then Marcus began to move, slow at first, building a rhythm that had Samuel's eyes rolling back, lost to everything but sensation. Mason's hands worked Samuel's body in time with his brother's thrusts, creating layers of pleasure that built on each other, until Samuel couldn't tell where one ended and another began. He was dimly aware that he was making sounds, desperate and broken, but couldn't bring himself to care about shame or propriety anymore. All that mattered was this, them, the fire consuming him from inside. The rhythm increased, Marcus driving deeper, harder, hitting something inside Samuel that made lightning streak through his entire body. He cried out, back arching, and both twins made sounds of satisfaction. Found it, Marcus panted. Going to make you see stars, boy. True to his word, he angled his thrusts to hit that spot again and again until Samuel was thrashing between them. Overcome, tears streaming down his face from the intensity. Mason's mouth covered his, swallowing his cries while Marcus' hands gripped his hips hard enough to bruise, marking him, claiming him. Going to fill you up, Marcus warned, his rhythm becoming erratic. Going to give you everything. Mark you inside and out. Samuel felt the moment it happened, the heat flooding through him, Marcus' roar of completion echoing through the barn. The sensation triggered something in Samuel, his own body clenching and pulsing around Marcus, drawing him impossibly deeper. They collapsed together in the hay, hearts racing, breathing ragged. Samuel thought it was over, thought he couldn't possibly take any more. But then Mason was there, turning him gently, those knowing eyes reading every flicker of exhaustion and renewed hunger in Samuel's face. My turn, Mason said simply. Samuel's eyes widened. I can't possibly. Yes, you can, Marcus murmured from behind, his hands stroking soothingly along Samuel's flanks. You're gonna take us both, remember, all night long. This is what you wanted, what you begged for, Mason added, positioning himself. And we always give our boy exactly what he needs. The second claiming was slower than the first, Mason taking his time despite Samuel's obvious fatigue, drawing out every sensation until Samuel was writhing helplessly, caught between too much and not enough. Marcus held him steady, whispering encouragement and praise, his hands roaming possessively. This time, when Mason thrust deep, Samuel was ready for the overwhelming fullness, the burning stretch. His body accepted the invasion more easily, already learning, already adjusting to accommodate these massive men. Mason set a punishing pace, different from his brothers, somehow both rougher and more tender, driving Samuel to heights he hadn't known existed. Look at you, Marcus breathed in his ear, taking it so beautifully. Made to be between us, weren't you? Made to be filled and used and loved. The word loved shouldn't have fit with the rough claiming, with the way Mason was driving into him with almost brutal force. But somehow it did. Somehow Samuel could feel the truth of it in every touch, every whispered word of praise, every careful adjustment to increase his pleasure, even as they took their own. Mason's hand wrapped around Samuel again, working him in time with his thrusts, and Samuel thought he might actually die from the pleasure. Thought his body might simply give out under the onslaught of sensation. But the twins held him together, Marcus supporting his weight while Mason drove him higher and higher until finally, impossibly, Samuel came apart again, his whole body convulsing with the force of it. Mason followed moments later, his roar matching his brother's, heat flooding through Samuel in waves. They collapsed together in a tangle of sweat-slicked limbs and heaving chests. Samuel sandwiched between the two massive bodies, feeling claimed and protected and utterly destroyed in the best possible way. For long moments, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound their labored breathing and the distant call of a hawk circling in the darkening sky. Samuel drifted in a haze of exhaustion and satiation, his body singing with 1,000 small aches that would bloom into bruises by morning. When he finally found his voice, it came out hoarse and wondering what happens now. The twins exchanged a look over his head, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Marcus pulled Samuel closer, tucking him against his chest while Mason curved around his back. Now, Marcus said, his voice gentle, we keep you, feed you, teach you, protect you, give you a home and a place in everything you never had before. And every night, Mason added, his breath hot against Samuel's neck, we remind you exactly who you belong to. Samuel should have protested, should have insisted he wasn't property to be kept. But lying there between them, marked inside and out with their claim, feeling safer and more wanted than he ever had in his 18 years, the words wouldn't come. Instead, he whispered, promise? Both twins answered together, their voices blending into one. Promise. Outside the barn, the Montana sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the prairie in shades of red and gold. Inside, 3 bodies intertwined in the hay, beginning what would become a ritual that would stretch through the long summer nights and beyond, learning each other's secrets, mapping each other's desires, building something that defied easy definition, but felt more real than anything Samuel had ever known. The ranch hands would whisper about it in hushed tones about the boy who came to the Double Star alone and afraid and left belonging to the Garrett twins, body and soul. Some would shake their heads in disapproval, others in envy. But none would deny that when Samuel Hayes walked across that dusty yard between the 2 massive cowboys, he walked taller, prouder, marked and claimed, and completely utterly satisfied. But that would come later. For now, in the fading light of his first day at the Double Star, Samuel Hayes surrendered to sleep between the 2 men who had ruined him for anyone else. His last coherent thought, a prayer of gratitude for the desperation that had led him here, to this barn, to these arms, to this perfect destruction and reformation. The night was young, and the twins had promised him everything. Samuel couldn't wait to see what that meant. Samuel woke to the sensation of lips trailing down his spine, slow and deliberate, mapping each vertebrae with devastating patience. For a moment he thought he was dreaming, that the events in the barn had been some fevered fantasy conjured by too much sun and too little food. But then hands, massive and calloused, gripped his hips, and he knew with sudden clarity that this was real. All of it real. Morning already? Samuel's voice came out rough, thoroughly used. Marcus' laugh rumbled against his shoulder blade. Boy, we haven't even made it to midnight yet. You passed out for maybe an hour. His teeth grazed sensitive skin, making Samuel gasp. We're just getting started. Samuel's body, exhausted beyond measure, somehow responded immediately to the promise in those words. He could feel himself stirring despite the ache, despite the bone-deep fatigue. What had they done to him, that he could want more when he could barely move? Mason appeared in his line of vision, holding a canteen and what looked like bread and cheese. Drink, he commanded gently, helping Samuel sit up. Eat, you're going to need your strength. Samuel obeyed, suddenly ravenous. The twins watched him with identical expressions of satisfaction as he devoured the simple meal, their gazes heavy with possessive pride. When he finished, Marcus pulled him back against his chest, arms wrapping around him like steel bands. We need to talk about the rules, Marcus said, his voice serious for the first time since the barn door had closed behind them. Samuel tensed. Rules? Mason settled in front of him, close enough that Samuel was surrounded by them on all sides. You belong to us now, both of us equally. That means nobody else touches you. Nobody else even looks at you too long. You're ours to protect, ours to pleasure, ours to punish if you step out of line. The word punish sent a shiver through Samuel that both twins noticed. Marcus' hands sped across his stomach, holding him tighter. You like that idea, boy? Like the thought of us bending you over when you misbehave, marking that perfect skin until you remember who you answer to? Samuel's breath came faster. He should be appalled, should be running for his life. Instead, he heard himself whisper, yes. Good. Mason said, his smile sharp. Second rule? You sleep between us every night. Don't care how tired you are. Don't care what work needs doing at dawn. You're in our bed where you belong. Third rule, Marcus continued, his hand drifting lower, making Samuel squirm. You don't hide from us. We want to know every thought, every fear, every desire. You're ours to know completely inside and out. And fourth, Mason's voice dropped dangerously low. You tell us when you need us. Don't suffer in silence. Don't pretend you can go without. We can smell it on you when you're aching for us. Boy. And making us wait just means we'll take you harder when we finally get our hands on you. Samuel's mind reeled. These weren't rules. They were ownership, complete and total. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to run, to preserve some scrap of independence. But his body, his treacherous body, was already melting into Marcus' hold, already leaning toward Mason's heat, craving their dominance like air. Do you understand? Marcus asked, his lips against Samuel's ear. I understand, Samuel breathed. Say it properly, Mason demanded. Say yes, Marcus. Yes, Mason. I understand and I obey. The words should have stuck in Samuel's throat, should have choked him with their finality. Instead, they flowed out smooth as honey, sealing his fate. Yes, Marcus. Yes, Mason. I understand and I obey. The effect was immediate. Both twins groaned, their control visibly fraying. Good boy, Marcus praised, his hand finally touching Samuel where he needed it most. Such a good, obedient boy. Going to reward you for that. Mason's hands joined his brothers, for hands on Samuel's body, learning him, claiming him, driving him to madness with coordinated precision. They had clearly done this before, shared someone between them, and their experience showed in every perfectly timed touch, every calculated pause that left Samuel gasping and begging. Please, Samuel whimpered beyond pride, beyond shame. Please, I need. Please don't stop. Please, what do you need? Mason asked, though his knowing smile said he understood perfectly. Use your words, Samuel. Tell us exactly what you want. You, Samuel, bed, inside me. Both of you, please. I need to feel you both need to be full. Please. The twins exchanged one of their wordless communications. Then Marcus was shifting Samuel's position, arranging him exactly how they wanted him. Clear's throat, you asked so prettily, Marcus murmured. How can we say no? What happened next defied Samuel's limited imagination, defied the laws of physics and human endurance. The twins took him simultaneously, working together with terrifying skill to open him up, to make room for both of them despite the impossible stretch. Samuel screamed, overwhelmed, certain he would break. But they held him together with strong hands and stronger wills, pushing deeper until he thought he might die from the fullness alone. Breathe, Mason commanded. You can take it. You were made to take us both. So full, Marcus added, his voice strained with the effort of control. So perfect. Look at you, taking everything we give you, stretching so beautifully for us. Samuel couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only feel as they began to move, perfectly synchronized, creating friction and pressure that built into something cosmic, something that transcended mere physical pleasure into the realm of the spiritual. He was being destroyed and remade with every thrust, his identity dissolving until he wasn't Samuel Hayes anymore, wasn't an orphan or a farm and or even a person separate from them. He was theirs, completely and irrevocably theirs, existing only to be filled and used and worshipped by these two perfect men. The climax, when it came, wasn't just his own, but seemed to involve all three of them, their bodies and souls tangling into something unified and eternal. Samuel heard himself screaming, heard the twins roaring their completion, felt heat flooding him from both directions until he thought he might burst from it. They collapsed in a heap of tangled limbs and heaving chests, Samuel barely conscious, floating in a haze of endorphins and exhaustion. The twins held him gently, murmuring praise and reassurance as aftershocks racked his trembling body. Love you, Marcus whispered against his temple, the words surprising in their tenderness. Love you so much, perfect boy. Ours forever, Mason added, his hand resting over Samuel's racing heart, never letting you go. Samuel should have questioned it, should have doubted such quick declarations. But lying there, split open and put back together by their hands, marked so deeply he would carry them inside him for days. He knew they meant every word. This wasn't temporary, wasn't just about physical pleasure. They had claimed him in every way that mattered, and Samuel had surrendered everything he had to give. Forever, he agreed, his voice barely a whisper. Yours forever. The night stretched on, filled with more moments of devastating intensity, punctuated by gentle care and whispered confessions. The twins taught Samuel things about his own body he had never imagined, showed him pleasures that bordered on pain, and pain that somehow transformed into pleasure. They learned his limits and pushed past them, then soothed him through the aftermath with infinite patience. By the time dawn painted the sky pink and gold, Samuel had been thoroughly ruined for any other life, any other love. He lay between the sleeping twins, their bodies wrapped around him protectively, even in sleep, and tried to remember who he had been before walking through the double stars gates. That boy seemed like a stranger now, innocent and ignorant, afraid of his own desires, the person Samuel was becoming, the person the Garrett twins were shaping with their hands and their words and their relentless claiming, was someone braver, someone who understood that true strength sometimes meant surrendering control, that belonging to someone completely could be the greatest freedom of all. Outside the barn, the ranch was waking up. Soon the other hands would be stirring, starting their day's work. Samuel knew he should move, should try to appear normal despite the marks covering his body and the way he would undoubtedly limp through his chores. But Marcus's arm tightened around him, and Mason mumbled something possessive in his sleep, and Samuel decided the world could wait a little longer. He had found his home, his purpose, his place. He had found two men who looked at him like he was precious and powerful and perfect exactly as he was. He had found love in the last place he expected it, in the arms of twin cowboys who demanded everything and gave twice as much in return. And if the price of that love was surrendering his independence, his privacy, his very identity, Samuel was discovering he was more than willing to pay it because what he got in return, the safety and passion and belonging, was worth any cost. The sun rose higher, golden light spilling through the barn's gaps, painting everything in shades of promise and new beginnings. Samuel Hayes closed his eyes and let sleep finally claim him, safe in the knowledge that when he woke, the twins would be there, ready to ruin him all over again. And he would welcome it with open arms and an open heart, surrendering to the only truth that mattered anymore. He belonged to them, Clear's throat, body, and soul, forever. Part 2. Samuel woke to voices, harsh and accusing, cutting through the gentle cocoon of warmth and safety he had been wrapped in. His eyes flew open, and he immediately tried to sit up, only to be stopped by the solid wall of Marcus' chest behind him, and Mason's arm thrown possessively across his waist. Get up, Garrett, a voice barked from below the hoft. All three of you now. Samuel's heart hammered against his ribs as recognition flooded through him. That was Hank Morrison, the ranch foreman, the man who had hired him just yesterday morning. Yesterday, when Samuel had been a different person entirely before the twins had taken him apart and rebuilt him in their image, Marcus stirred first, his body going from relaxed to alert in an instant. Mason followed, both twins moving with the coordinated precision of men used to facing danger together. They didn't seem concerned, Samuel noticed with growing panic. Didn't seem worried about being caught like this, naked and tangled together in the hay. Stay here, Marcus murmured against Samuel's temple, his voice still rough with sleep. Let us handle this. But Samuel couldn't stay hidden, couldn't let them face whatever wrath was coming alone. He pushed himself up despite the protests of his thoroughly used body, wincing at the aches that bloomed with every movement. The twins noticed their expressions darkening with possessive satisfaction before they turned their attention to pulling on their discarded clothes. By the time they climbed down the ladder, Samuel following on shaking legs, Morrison was pacing like a caged animal, his weathered face twisted with disgust. Behind him stood three other ranch hands, their expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed hunger as they took in Samuel's appearance. The marks visible on every inch of exposed skin. The way he moved like something thoroughly broken in. This what you've been doing? Morrison spat, gesturing at Samuel. This is what I hire help for, so you two can use him like some kind of. He struggled for words, searching for something vile enough. Samuel flinched, shame flooding through him, despite everything the twins had told him about pride and belonging. Careful, Hank. Marcus' voice was dangerously soft. Very careful how you finish that sentence. Morrison's face turned purple. "Don't you threaten me, boy. I don't care who owns this ranch. I'm the foreman here and I won't stand for this kind of depravity under my watch." "Then quit," Mason said simply, his tone bored. "Walk off the property and don't come back because Samuel stays and what we do with him is none of your damn business." The air crackled with tension. Morrison's hand drifted toward the gun at his hip and Samuel's breath caught in his throat. But the twins didn't move, didn't show even a flicker of concern. And after a long, tense moment, Morrison's hand fell away. "The town will hear about this," Morrison growled. "The whole county will know what kind of men run the Double Star. What kind of filth you traffic in. Let them know," Marcus said, stepping forward until he was toe-to-toe with the older man. "Let the whole world know that we found someone worth keeping, worth protecting. And if anyone at all, tries to take him from us, they'll answer to both barrels of my shotgun." Morrison's eyes darted between the twins, seeing something there that made him step back. Without another word, he turned and stalked toward the barn door, the other hand scrambling to follow. But one of them, a lean young man with cruel eyes, lingered just long enough to look Samuel up and down with naked want before Marcus snarled and the man fled. When the barn door slammed shut, Samuel's legs finally gave out. He would have hit the ground if Mason hadn't caught him, pulling him against his chest with infinite gentleness. "You're shaking," Mason murmured. "It's all right, love. They're gone. But they'll come back," Samuel whispered, his voice breaking. "Morrison will bring others. We'll tell everyone. We'll make sure the whole county knows what I am, what we did." "Good," Marcus said fiercely, kneeling in front of Samuel and cupping his face with both hands. "Let them know. Let everyone know that you're ours and we're yours. I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of acting like what we feel is something shameful." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. In the towns I came from, men like us, we disappeared. We were found beaten in alleys or hanging from trees. And nobody asked questions. Nobody cared. I can't let that happen to you because of me." The twins exchanged one of their wordless looks and Samuel saw something shift in their expressions. Something protective and feral rising to the surface. "Then we fight," Mason said simply. "We protect what's ours. And if the whole county wants to make an issue of it, well," his smile was sharp as broken glass. "We've faced worse odds." Marcus pulled Samuel into his arms, and Mason wrapped around both of them, creating a fortress of muscle and warmth and unwavering determination. "Nothing and no one," Marcus vowed, his voice vibrating through Samuel's chest, "will ever take you from us. Not Morrison, not the town, not God himself. You're ours, Samuel Hayes, and we protect what belongs to us." Samuel wanted to believe them, wanted to trust that their strength and their love would be enough. But he had seen what happened to people like them, had watched communities tear apart anyone who dared to be different. And now, because he had been selfish, because he had surrendered to desire instead of walking away, he had painted a target on all three of their backs. The days that followed proved Samuel's fears weren't unfounded. Morrison made good on his threat, spreading word throughout the county about the depravity happening at the Double Star. Some ranch hands quit immediately, crossing themselves as they rode away. Others stayed but kept their distance, shooting dark looks at Samuel whenever he crossed their paths. The twins responded by becoming more openly affectionate, more blatantly possessive. They moved Samuel into the main house, into their bedroom, making it clear to everyone that he wasn't just a ranch hand anymore, but something infinitely more precious. They touched him constantly when others were watching. Marcus' hand on the small of his back, Mason's arm around his shoulders, both of them standing so close that Samuel was constantly surrounded by their presence. At first, Samuel tried to protest, tried to maintain some semblance of discretion, but the twins were relentless. And eventually, Samuel stopped fighting it, stopped caring what the remaining hands thought, because in the twins' arms, under their possessive gazes, he felt more valued and more protected than he ever had trying to hide in shadows. But protection could only go so far. 2 weeks after Morrison's discovery, Samuel rode into town alone to pick up supplies, insisting that the twins had more important work on the ranch. It was a mistake he would regret for the rest of his life. He was loading sacks of grain into the wagon when he felt them, eyes crawling over his skin like insects. He turned to find Morrison standing with 5 other men, all of them armed, all of them wearing expressions that made Samuel's blood run cold. Well, Morrison drawled. If it isn't the Garrett's little plaything. All alone, too. Where are your protectors now, boy? Samuel's hand moved toward the revolver at his hip, but he was outnumbered, and he knew it. The smart thing would be to run to get back to the ranch and the twins as fast as his horse could carry him. But pride, foolish pride, kept his feet planted. I'm not afraid of you, Samuel said, proud that his voice didn't shake. Morrison's smile was ugly. You should be. See, we've been talking. Me and the boys here been deciding that this county doesn't need your kind corrupting and good Christian folk. Been deciding that maybe it's time to send a message about what happens to devils who spread their poison. The men fanned out, circling Samuel like wolves. His hand finally closed around his gun. But before he could draw, something hard cracked against the back of his skull, and the world exploded into stars and darkness. When Samuel woke, he was hanging upside down from a tree branch, rope biting into his ankles, blood rushing to his head until his vision swam. Morrison stood below him, spinning a knife between his fingers. The other men, watching with hungry anticipation. Thought we'd make an example of you, Morrison said conversationally. Let the Garretts know what happens when they flaunt their sin in God-fearing country. By the time we're done, they'll be picking up pieces of you for miles. Terror flooded through Samuel, but underneath it, fury burned hot and bright. You touch me, he gasped out, and they'll kill every last one of you. They'll burn this whole town to the ground. Morrison laughed. They'll try, but we'll be ready. And when they come running to save you, well, that's when we'll finish all 3 of you. Clean this county up proper. The knife came closer, close enough that Samuel could see his reflection in the blade. He closed his eyes, praying that death would be quick, that the twins would forgive him for being so foolish for leaving them alone. Then the gunshot cracked through the air like thunder, and Morrison's knife went flying from his hand. Samuel's eyes snapped open to see the twins cresting the hill on their matching Appaloosas. Rifles raised, faces transformed into masks of cold fury that made Morrison's men scatter like cockroaches. Cut him down, Marcus' voice could have frozen hell itself. Now or we start dropping bodies, Mason added, his rifle trained on Morrison's chest. Your choice. You've got 3 seconds, Morrison fumbled with the rope, his hands shaking so badly he could barely work the knots. Samuel crashed to the ground hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. But before he could even gasp for air, Marcus was there scooping him up like he weighed nothing, cradling him against his chest while Mason kept every gun trained on the men who had dared to touch what was theirs. Anyone else want to try? Mason asked, his voice deadly calm. Anyone else think they can put hands on our boy and live to tell about it? Silence answered him. Even Morrison seemed to understand he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The twins had killed before, Samuel realized with sudden clarity, had taken lives to protect what mattered to them, and they would do it again without hesitation. Marcus carried Samuel to his horse, settling him in the saddle before mounting behind him, keeping him caged in protective arms. Mason backed his horse away slowly, rifle never wavering until they were out of range. Only then did he turn, and the 3 of them rode hard for the double star, leaving a very clear message in their wake. Touch Samuel Hayes again and there would be blood. Back at the ranch, the twins were gentle as they tended Samuel's wounds, cleaning the cut on his head, wrapping ice and cloth for the swelling, checking every inch of him for damage. But underneath the tenderness, Samuel could feel their rage simmering, could see it in the tightness of Marcus' jaw and the white knuckle grip of Mason's hands. We're leaving, Marcus said finally. Tonight we'll pack what we can carry and ride for California. Start over somewhere nobody knows us. Samuel's heart clenched. You can't. This is your home, your ranch. Everything you've built is worthless without you, Mason finished. Don't you understand, Samuel? This place is just land and wood and cattle. You're everything. We'll burn it all down before we let them take you from us. Tears streamed down Samuel's face. But they'll follow us. Morrison won't stop. Won't let this go. We'll be running forever. Then we run forever, Marcus said simply, pulling Samuel into his arms. As long as we're together, nothing else matters. But Samuel couldn't let them sacrifice everything for him. Couldn't let them become fugitives because he had been foolish enough to get caught. There had to be another way. Had to be something they could do that didn't involve abandoning everything the twins had worked for. The answer came from an unexpected source. The next morning, a writer approached carrying a letter sealed with an official stamp. The twins read it together, their expressions shifting from suspicion to surprise to something that looked almost like hope. It's from Judge Whitmore in Helena, Marcus said slowly. Says he received reports about harassment and violence at the Double Star. Says he's sending federal marshals to investigate Morrison and his men for assault and attempted murder. Samuel's eyes widened. But how would he know? We didn't report anything. Mason's smile was slow and dangerous. Someone did. Someone who saw what happened in town and had the guts to tell the truth. The marshals arrived 3 days later. Grim-faced men with federal authority that superseded any local loyalties. They arrested Morrison and 2 of his accomplices, hauling them away in chains while the rest of the county watched in stunned silence. Judge Whitmore himself rode out to the Double Star. A steel-haired man with eyes that had seen too much to be shocked by anything. He sat across from the twins and Samuel in the main house, accepting coffee with a nod of thanks. I'll be blunt, he said. I don't care who you share your bed with. I care about justice and the law, and what Morrison did was attempted murder, plain and simple. His gaze moved to Samuel, taking in the still healing bruises. You're the victim here, son, not the criminal. Samuel's throat closed up. In his experience, authority figures weren't on the side of people like him. But Judge Whitmore's eyes held only professional concern and perhaps the slightest hint of sympathy. Montana territory is changing, the judge continued. We're not like the old states, stuck in their backwards ways out here. We need every able-bodied soul we can get, and we can't afford to lose good people just because some fools can't mind their own business. He stood, adjusting his coat. Morrison will hang for what he did. I'll make sure of it. As for the rest of you, his gaze swept over all 3 of them. I clear's throat suggest you live your lives however you see fit, and let anyone who has a problem with it take it up with federal law. After he left, the 3 of them sat in stunned silence. Samuel couldn't quite believe it, couldn't process that they might actually be safe, that they might actually have a future here without constantly looking over their shoulders. Marcus broke the silence first, pulling Samuel into his lap and burying his face in his neck. Thought I'd lost you? He said, his voice muffled and raw. When we rode into town and saw you hanging there, I thought my heart would stop. Never again, Mason added fiercely, joining them, wrapping his arms around both of them. You don't leave this ranch without both of us by your side. You don't take chances with your safety. You're too precious to risk. Samuel clung to them, feeling the tremors running through their powerful bodies, understanding for the first time just how terrified they had been. These 2 massive men who feared nothing had been brought to their knees by the thought of losing him. The realization was humbling and empowering at once.
I'm sorry, Samuel whispered.
I'm so sorry I scared you. Don't be sorry, Marcus said, pulling back to look at him with burning eyes. Just promise you'll never forget how much you mean to us. Promise you'll never underestimate how far we'll go to keep you safe. I promise, Samuel said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. That night they made love with a desperation that bordered on violence. The twins claiming Samuel over and over as if they could somehow mark him so deeply that death itself wouldn't dare touch him. Samuel surrendered to it completely, giving them everything they needed, every reassurance that he was alive and whole and theirs. Afterward, wrapped in their arms, Samuel finally let himself believe in the future. Let himself imagine years stretching ahead, seasons changing. The 3 of them growing old together on this land they had defended with blood and courage. It wouldn't be easy, he knew. There would always be people who disapproved, who whispered and judged. But they had survived the worst, had stared down death and won. Whatever else came, they would face it together. The weeks turned to months, and the Double Star began to change in ways none of them had anticipated. Word spread about Judge Whitmore's decision. about Morrison's hanging, about the federal government's willingness to protect those who had been targeted for who they loved. At first, it was just whispers, rumors carried on the wind by travelers passing through. Then the letters started arriving, carefully worded inquiries from men whose desperation bled through every line of cramped handwriting. The first to arrive was a young man named Thomas, barely 20, with haunted eyes and scars on his wrists from rope that had been meant to hang him. He rode up to the gate at dawn, his horse half dead from hard riding, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the reins. The twins brought him inside, fed him, listened to his story of narrow escape and endless flight. By sunset, Thomas was asleep in the bunkhouse, and Samuel understood that something fundamental had shifted. They came in ones and twos at first, then in larger groups as word spread further. Each brought their own story of persecution and survival, of families that had cast them out, of towns that had driven them away with stones and threats and violence. Some were ranch hands like Samuel. Others were merchants or teachers or soldiers, united only by the love they had been told was unnatural, and the courage it took to seek sanctuary. The twins welcomed them all. But it was Samuel who became the heart of the growing community. He understood their fear because he had lived it, understood their shame because he had carried it, and he understood more than anyone what it meant to be seen and accepted completely. He worked alongside the new arrivals, sharing meals and stories, slowly building trust and fellowship. Marcus and Mason watched their boy bloom into a leader with fierce pride. Samuel still belonged to them completely in the privacy of their bedroom, still surrendered to their touch with the same desperate need. But during the day, he was becoming something more, someone the others looked to for guidance and reassurance. The twins supported it completely, understanding that their love for Samuel was strong enough to encompass his growth into his own power. But growth brought complications. Not everyone who arrived was ready to build something new. Some brought their anger with them, their bitterness at the world that had rejected them. Others struggled to trust, to believe that the sanctuary the Double Star offered was real and permanent. One man in particular, a scarred veteran named Cole, seemed determined to test every boundary. He challenged Samuel openly, questioned the twins' authority, stirred dissent among the newer arrivals. Marcus wanted to throw him off the property immediately, but Samuel argued for patience, seeing in Cole's anger a reflection of his own early fear. The confrontation came to a head one evening in the bunkhouse. Cole stood in front of a dozen men, his voice carrying across the wooden space. "We're building something here," he said, his eyes glittering with dangerous intensity. "But are we building it right? These twins, they own everything, control everything. They took Samuel and made him theirs, claimed him like property. How is that different from what the world does to us, treating us like we're less than human?" Samuel felt Marcus tense beside him, felt Mason's hand move toward his gun, but Samuel stepped forward before either twin could react. His voice calm, but carrying an edge of steel that made everyone go silent. "You want to know the difference, Cole?" Samuel asked. "The difference is choice. I chose them and they chose me. Every single day I wake up and choose to stay, choose to love them, choose to build this life with them." His gaze swept the room. "That's what we're offering here. Choice. The freedom to love who you want, to build the life you want without fear of violence or persecution. But freedom means respecting everyone's choices, not just your own." Cole's jaw clenched. "And if someone chooses wrong, chooses someone who hurts them, who controls them, then we help them make a different choice," Samuel replied. "We support them. We give them options. We make sure they know they're not alone." His voice softened slightly. "I know you're angry, Cole. I know you've been hurt, have seen terrible things. But that anger will destroy you if you let it. Will poison everything you touch. You have to choose whether you want to keep fighting ghosts or start building something real." The silence that followed was absolute. Then slowly, Cole's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. "I don't know how," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to stop being angry, how to trust again." Samuel moved closer, placing a hand on Cole's shoulder. "You learn," he said gently, "one day at a time, one choice at a time. and you let the people around you help carry the weight until you're strong enough to carry it yourself. That night marked a turning point. Cole became one of the community's staunchest defenders. His anger transformed into protective vigilance, and Samuel's role evolved from victim to leader to something approaching a spiritual guide for men learning to navigate their own freedom. The twins watched it all with a mixture of pride and possessive hunger. Seeing Samuel command respect, seeing him help others with such natural authority only intensified their desire for him. They made sure he understood in the privacy of their bedroom that his growing independence only made him more precious to them, that watching him become his own man was the most erotic thing they had ever witnessed. And Samuel, who had once thought belonging to someone meant diminishing himself, discovered that true love meant being encouraged to become everything you were capable of being. The twins celebrated every milestone of his growth, every moment where he stepped into his own power, and then claimed him with even greater intensity afterward, as if his strength fed their desire rather than threatening it. The ranch prospered under their combined leadership. The twins handled the business and the physical labor. Samuel handled the people and their complex emotional needs, and together they built something that became legendary throughout the territory. The Double Star wasn't just a working ranch anymore. It was a symbol, a beacon that said love in all its forms deserved protection and celebration. But symbols attracted attention, not all of it welcome. 6 months after Morrison's hanging, a group of wealthy ranchers from 3 counties away rode up to the Double Star's gates, their expensive horses and tailored clothes, marking them as men of significant influence. They requested a meeting with the Garrett brothers, their tone polite, but their eyes hard with judgment. The twins met them in the main house, Samuel standing between them in a show of unified strength. The leader of the group, a silver-haired man named Blackwood, came straight to the point. "We've heard what you're building here," he said. "We've heard you're taking in perverts and deviants, giving them sanctuary." His lip curled with distaste. "We're here to make you an offer. Dismantle this operation. Send these men away, and we'll triple the price of your land. You can move somewhere else. Start fresh without this stain on your reputation." Marcus' smile was cold as winter. "And if we refuse," Blackwood's expression hardened, "then we'll make sure every legitimate rancher in Montana Territory refuses to do business with you. We'll cut off your supply lines, undercut your prices, drive you into bankruptcy. One way or another, this abomination ends." Samuel felt his heart sink, fear clawing at his throat. These were powerful men with resources and connections the Double Star couldn't match. They could make good on their threats, could destroy everything the community had built. But before Samuel could speak, Mason laughed, the sound sharp and dangerous. "You think we're afraid of you?" Mason asked. "You think we built this place to make money?" His hand found Samuel's, squeezing tight. "We built it because it needed to exist. Because men were dying out there for being who they are. Because love deserves a place to grow without fear. And no amount of money, no threat of bankruptcy will make us abandon that." Blackwood's face turned purple. "You're fools, all of you. You'll be ruined. We'll die penniless and alone in some godforsaken corner of nowhere." "Maybe," Marcus said calmly, "but we'll die knowing we stood for something that mattered, knowing we protected people when the rest of the world wanted them dead. Can you say the same?" The meeting ended with threats on both sides. And as the ranchers rode away, Samuel turned to the twins with tears in his eyes. "They could destroy us," he whispered. "Everything we've built, everyone depending on us." The twins pulled him close, surrounding him with their strength. "Then we rebuild," Marcus said simply. "And if they destroy that, we rebuild again as many times as it takes for as long as we have breath. Because this," he gestured to encompass the ranch, the people, the life they had created. "This is worth fighting for." In the end, Blackwood and his allies made good on their threats. They cut off supply lines, spread vicious rumors, did everything in their power to strangle the Double Star economically. But they had underestimated 2 things: the resourcefulness of the Garrett twins and the loyalty of the community they had built. The men of the Double Star pulled their skills and resources, becoming self-sufficient in ways that shocked everyone. They built their own mills, started their own gardens, traded with sympathetic merchants willing to defy the boycott. What should have broken them instead made them stronger, more united, more determined to prove that love could triumph over hatred. And slowly, grudgingly, even some of their enemies began to respect what they had accomplished. When a wildfire threatened to destroy 3 counties, it was the Double Star's men who rode out to help fight it, working alongside the very ranchers who had tried to destroy them. When disease struck the cattle in the valley, it was the Double Star's innovative treatments that saved thousands of heads of livestock. Actions spoke louder than threats, and gradually the tide of public opinion began to shift. Not everywhere, not everyone, but enough that the Double Star no longer stood completely alone against a hostile world. It became a haven, a sanctuary for those who had nowhere else to go. Samuel watched it grow with pride. Watched the twins transform from isolated men, protecting their dark secret, into leaders of a community bound together by shared experience and mutual protection. And at the center of it all, their relationship deepened and evolved. The desperate need of those first nights mellowed into something richer, more complex. They still came together with explosive passion, still marked and claimed each other with possessive intensity. But now there were also quiet mornings over coffee, long evenings discussing the day's work, moments of simple domesticity that felt as profound as any physical joining. Samuel learned the rhythms of their bodies and their minds, learned to read the subtle differences between the twins that no one else seemed to notice, learned that Marcus was the strategist, always thinking 3 steps ahead, while Mason was pure instinct, following his gut without hesitation, learned that together they were unstoppable, 2 halves of a perfect whole, and that he had somehow become the piece that balanced them both. 1 year after that first day in the barn, Samuel stood on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the prairie. The ranch bustled with life now. 24 men working the land and the cattle, all of them bound together by trust and loyalty and the shared understanding that here they were safe to be who they really were. Marcus came up behind him, wrapping strong arms around his waist and resting his chin on Samuel's shoulder. "Happy anniversary, love," he murmured. Samuel leaned back into his warmth, marveling at how natural it felt. "How right. Has it really been a year?" "Best year of my life," Mason said, appearing on Samuel's other side, his hand finding Samuel's and squeezing gently. Samuel looked between them, these 2 beautiful, powerful men who had taken a broken, terrified boy and given him everything he never knew he needed. A home, a purpose, a family. Love so fierce and consuming it had literally changed the world around them. "Mine too," Samuel said softly. "Best year of my life." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, the 3 of them stood together, bound by choice and by love, and by the unshakable certainty that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it side by side. The prairie stretched endless before them, full of possibility and promise. And for the first time in his life, Samuel Hayes looked toward the future without fear. Because he had learned the most important truth of all, that love, real love, the kind worth fighting for, wasn't about hiding or shame or being small enough to avoid notice. It was about standing tall, claiming what was yours, and refusing to apologize for the shape your happiness took. The Double Star Ranch had become a beacon for those brave enough to seek it, a testament to what could be built when people refused to let hatred and fear dictate their lives. And at its heart stood 3 men who had dared to love openly, fully, without reservation or regret. Years later, when travelers asked about the Double Star and its legendary owners, they would hear stories that sounded impossible. Stories of twin cowboys who had challenged an entire county, and one who had built an empire on land others said was cursed, who had loved so fiercely they had changed the very fabric of Montana territory. Some snorts would call the stories exaggerated, the kind of tall tales the West was famous for. But those who made the journey, who rode through the Double Star's gates and saw the thriving community within, knew the truth. Love, the kind that refused to hide or diminish itself, had the power to transform not just individuals but entire worlds. And 3 men brought together by fate and desperation and courage had proven it beyond any doubt. Samuel Hayes, the orphaned farmhand who had arrived with nothing but a worn satchel and desperate hope, had become Samuel Garrett in all but legal name. The twins had given him their brand, their protection, their hearts, and he had given them something equally precious in return. A reason to build instead of just survive, to hope instead of just endure, to love openly instead of hiding in shadows. On quiet evenings when the work was done and the three of them sat on the porch watching stars emerge in the darkening sky, Samuel sometimes thought back to that first day, to the moment he had seen the twins riding toward him like something out of a dream. He had been so terrified, so certain that what he felt was wrong and shameful and had to be hidden at all costs. Now he understood that the only thing wrong had been the voices telling him to be ashamed, to be small, to accept loneliness as the price of safety. The twins had shown him a different path, had loved him so completely and so publicly that shame couldn't survive in the face of it. And in teaching him to love himself, they had inadvertently taught an entire community that love came in many forms. All of them valid, all of them worth protecting and celebrating. The Double Star Ranch stood as proof that courage and love could triumph over hatred and fear. That three men willing to stand together could change the world around them. That sometimes the most radical act of all was simply refusing to hide who you were and who you loved. As Marcus pulled Samuel closer and Mason's hand found his, Samuel closed his eyes and let himself simply exist in this moment of perfect peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight, new ground to defend. But tonight, surrounded by the two men who had saved him and been saved by him in return, Samuel Hayes was exactly where he belonged. Home, whole, loved beyond measure forever. Thank you for journeying through this story with me. If it touched your heart, if it reminded you that love comes in many forms and all of them are beautiful, then I've done what I set out to do. Remember, wherever you are in the world, whoever you love, you deserve to live openly and proudly. You deserve your own double star, your own place where you can be completely unapologetically yourself. I love you all, my dear audience. Until we meet again around the campfire for another tale from the West, may you find the courage to claim your happiness and the strength to defend it against all who would deny you. Leave a comment below if this story moved you. Type the number 1 if you believe love is love, no matter what form it takes. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate the courage to love openly and the strength to build communities where everyone belongs. The Wild West was never just about cowboys and cattle. It was about people brave enough to write their own rules, to build their own worlds, to love on their own terms. And that spirit, that refusal to be diminished or hidden, lives on in every person who dares to stand tall and claim their truth. Until next time, ride safe, love fearlessly, and remember, you are worthy of every happiness you can claim.
आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। मुस्कुरा के बात करती हो, आदतें खराब करती हो, ना दिखो बेताब लगता हूँ, आशिक बेहिसाब लगता हूँ। ऐसा नशा है तेरे दीदार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। जिंदगी हसीन लगती है जब ये जालिम प्यार होता है, सांसों में सांस आती है जब तेरा दीदार होता है। नखरा है ऐसा मेरी सरकार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। नखरा इसका टॉप पर, आती है टिकटॉक पर, नैनो से है नैन मिलाती, लड़कों के है दिल जलाती, पिंडी में है चर्चा इसका, नीरा जितना खर्चा इसका। मैंने बोला इसको मेट्रो में बिठाऊंगा, कैपिटल ले जाऊंगा, F7 भी घुमाऊंगा, मोनाल भी दिखाऊंगा, सेंटोरस भी ले जाऊंगा। आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। मौसमों की बेकरारी को आजमा के जान जाओगी, हिज्र की आजमाइश में एक दिन पहचान जाओगी। कहना है मेरे दिल बेकरार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार